Hi, good evening all. Welcome to Eververse Trading Weekly Stock Market Update, and without further ado, let's get right into it. Firstly, on key macro updates, Fear and Greed Index, we are currently still in great territory. Last I checked, probably about 60 plus point. So the advice is to hold on to existing longs. Don't blindly long now. Although we are still in a relatively healthy market, valuations are certainly very stretched in certain sectors. So be careful when you look for stocks to long. Essentially, don't blindly long, right? Look for the appropriate sectors. Last week I've been calling out Microsoft, I've been calling out software for the past couple of weeks, and they ran. Okay, so for those of you still missing out, I'm not sure what to say about you guys. But yes, we are still in a relatively healthy market, and I do think there's still room for the market to run higher. Though I do think that the top is also near, right? So I will elaborate on this further later. Next, Straits of Hormuz effectively still stay shut despite the ceasefire. But as I mentioned, for the past few weeks already, the equity market just doesn't care, right? It's not pricing for a prolonged Straits of Hormuz disruption to the extent whereby higher oil prices will severely cut output, economic growth, employment, so on and so forth. The market is essentially pricing this to be a non-event because there's no way. If the market is pricing the Straits of Hormuz closure to be prolonged, this 12 MBD shortage of crude that comes out of the Straits of Hormuz, it will definitely impact the economy severely. So the market is essentially treating this as a non-event. Latest update on the Straits of Hormuz situation is that US naval blockade has been reportedly removed. So for those of you that do not know, US actually imposed their own naval blockade on Iranian crude and product shipment. So which means that Iranian, yes, they can block the Straits of Hormuz and allow their own ship to pass. But once those ships pass through the Straits of Hormuz, the US blockade actually prevent them from these ships to actually sail out to the open sea to the end customer, the end user. So essentially this severely chokes off Iran's revenue, and then will force them into a economic crisis, financial crisis, so on and so forth. And then this is one of the bargaining chip Trump holds over Iran that is very important. So the fact that this US naval blockade is reportedly removed, barring any changes to that, you can kind of foresee that the conflict is actually gonna end soon, because there's no way Trump will actually give out such an important leverage unless a deal is gonna come soon. Next, more on a stock market basis, on an individual stock basis, SpaceX was just awarded a 4.16 billion contract to actually build satellites to track airborne targets. So as the world progress more towards a multipolar world, you can kind of expect government of both countries, China and US, to actually reportedly spend more on their military capabilities to best each other. Because in the event of a conflict, right, you need arms, you need military capability to be able to deter aggression or even win the war, right? And one key issue could be just China trying to attack Taiwan, and then US, you're not sure whether they're gonna come in or not, right? But what is clear is that China will continue to build out their military dominance, and the same can be said for US. And how do you build your military dominance? You spend. Okay? Yes. So that's all on key macro updates. Okay, next, let's move on to key macro indicators. So as usual, this is my list of tables of the macro indicators I look at, and let's look at some of the key ones. Today I'll be covering Nasdaq, VIX, Bitcoin, and then Brent. Okay, let's start with Nasdaq. Last week's call was spot on. Last week I was calling that price actually pulled back last week, and I'm saying that okay, it will likely take the high, or if not, it will consolidate a while before taking a high. Either ways, I'm not bearish. Okay. And then yes, price indeed took the high, and we continue rallying. Now we are near peak euphoria in my opinion, and the VIX. And if you actually look at the VIX, it's actually bottoming soon. Okay, let's take a look at the chart and then see what I mean. Okay, let's go. So last week there was this pullback on Friday. I was saying that okay, price should be able to break this high. So here is a break of structure, and then price continue rallying higher. Okay, so we are definitely in a euphoria. Price continue heading higher, charging higher and higher. The big question is when this will stop, right? And my answer is I think soon, but not soon enough for you to actually sell off your position. Why? Okay, let's take a look at the VIX now. So For those of you that don't already know, the VIX is kind of inverse of the market. So if let's say the VIX go down, the market will go up, and the VIX go up, the market will go down. So you can see that for the large part of say July, since July 2024, which is maybe the last 2 years, right? This has kind of been the bottom the VIX has reached. Okay, so I know that in my past video have been calling for $16, right? But given how strong the market rally is, I would like to be more conservative about my zone and actually refine it to where these prices actually last touch before it rallied. So in the end I refined it to maybe about $14 plus, 14.50-ish. So you see price tap one time here, 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 here. Okay, sometimes you didn't tap, but close. Okay. The idea is not here tap, 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 tap. The idea is not for you to actually snipe the bottom, the absolute bottom. But to me, if I were to take a long on VIX and a short on market here, I think it would be a very sensible bet. Okay. So from current VIX prices, which is at about 15.50, I do think that maybe there's still some room for upside for the market and then some room for downside for the market VIX. So I expect VIX to eventually reach lower before bouncing, and then what you could correspondingly expect from the market is it can go higher and then the pullback will start. Okay, so that's on the VIX. Next, let's take a look at Bitcoin. I know some of you are very avid Bitcoin traders here. Okay, so Bitcoin essentially bounced off this demand, hit a higher tap supply and then sold off, right? So now we are in a key demand zone. I'll be more bullish than bearish, honestly, but personally, you have to be aware that we are still in a downtrend, and I wouldn't be too aggressive with my longs here, though I do think that there's definitely room for some sort of bounce. But as for whether this will turn into a reversal, I'm much less certain. Okay, let me just take a look at lower time frame. I do think that this low will be taken out. Yes. Next, let's take a look at Brent. Okay, Brent, as we have been saying for the longest time, Brent has been trapped in this consolidation, and what I expect is unless a ceasefire or like unless the agreement is signed, how Hormuz is gonna be open, what are the exact mechanism at which Iranian is gonna help guide the boat, how will US assist in this? Unless this agreement is actually put in place and signed, I do think that their brand will continue being in a range. Because what we have seen thus far is that a ceasefire is announced, Hormuz is reportedly open, but Iranians are still shooting. So people are not confident, right? So we need confidence in the market that says, okay, Hormuz is gonna open, vessels are really gonna go in, vessels gonna charge out, go in, load crude and come out traffic as usual. Then I do think that there's room for Brent to come down. Though I do think that with the recent news I mentioned to you guys, which is naval blockade reportedly removed, I do think that we can see lower Brent prices. But I would be very interested to long it back up if it reaches the bottom of the band. Okay, so that's for me. Okay, that's on key macro updates.